Hey friends, it's Awkwardly Random with Cinthia and Michelle, where we talk about random topics.
Anything and everything awkward is on the table, so let's dive right in.
Hey everybody,
Welcome back to Awkwardly Random
with Cinthia and Michelle.
Yay, we're back for another episode.
Yes, another episode, another one filled with hopefully a good conversation for y'all. And we're excited to be here. Mish, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? So if people usually watch us through like video format, you'll see that our squares are a little bit smaller because we're using a different platform. So we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, we'll see.
But
we're excited to try this new way of doing it.
Yeah,
recording.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm doing good. Having a good weekend. A little stressed with work, but still overall good. How have you been?
Good. We celebrated a friend's 30th last night, so that was fun. I can't believe most of my friends are 30 now, and
not me, but yeah,
we're up next.
I know. I'm like, not me, but I'm next year
in a few months, right?
Wait, yeah,
you have like 2 months left. Oh, that's crazy.
No, that's 3 months. Calm down,
fine.
Beans.
3 months. 3 months. I was thinking November.
Yeah, I was like, we just started November.
Okay, fine. 3 months.
Yeah.
3 months.
Okay.
Either way, you're coming up soon. So
yeah, I'm happy about it though. I don't mind getting older.
I'm excited. to see what 30 is going to bring for us. We'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm good. We did that. I did the hot chocolate run in Chicago on Saturday with Jasmine, and that was a lot of fun. It was really good weather, thank goodness. Later on, it started to rain, but that was fine because we had already finished the race. But yeah, it was good. We've turned this into some sort of hobby or tradition to just do a bunch of 5Ks whenever we can.
Nice.
So get the free sweaters and the free food and the medals.
But you have to register though, right? Like pay to do all of that?
Yeah, I guess it's not free, but yes.
Okay. Cool.
You pay for all of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds fun though. That's glad that it's nice that you picked up like a tradition or a thing to do together. So
yeah,
I'm sure you have a list of everything you've done and then can add more to it, like maybe across the US or something.
Yeah, so we're trying to hopefully be in Nashville in December for the Santa Hustle. So
wow.
Yeah.
So you would spend Christmas over there?
No, the Santa Hustle is the beginning of December.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's
first
soon.
week of December. Yeah, in like a month.
Yeah.
So we're trying to see if we can go make that happen if possible. Nice. We did the Santa Hustle in Milwaukee last year.
Yeah.
But
what does that mean? You just run and you dress up like
it's
Santa?
It's a 5K.
Okay. Like
valid questions, yes. So they did give us the hat and the beard.
Oh.
And like a red sweater, zip up hoodie.
Nice.
So and the medal, of course. So it was cool, but it was so rough because it was really cold that day in December in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
And we were running off the lake. Literally right by the lake.
The wind was probably smacking you in the face. Oh, wow.
Yeah, the water was smacking us. Like we just got drenched in water coming from the lake because of the wind. So the waves were just like hitting us.
Dang. And so people can run it or walk it or both. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
We tend to do like a fast walk / like jog.
Nice.
But our goal is to hopefully be able to run a 5K all the way, nonstop. And then eventually do like 10Ks, 15Ks. Who knows? Maybe a half marathon in the future.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. I've always wanted to do a marathon, but I haven't actually like trained or anything. It's just like a thought. Oh, that would be fun. But yeah.
That'd be cool. If you want to do it, we should train, do something.
Yeah, I just need to figure out how to get my stamina up with running because I feel like, I can be good at it. I just need to train my like lungs and my legs and my body. But I don't know. I'm also not a good runner, but I don't know. That's
and
just
your
in my head.
mind.
Yeah, it's more my mind, basically. Like if you hear me talk, it's that.
But yeah, you could do it if you wanted to.
True. Jesus is definitely a runner. He can.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Well, he can outrun me for sure.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
There's difference between like speed running, right, and then endurance running. So maybe he should outrun you, but could you last longer, right? So it really depends.
No,
where your endurance is at.
He has the endurance and the speed.
And the speed.
I just have. I can have a little bit of endurance, but that's about it. But it'll like diminish quickly. But you're right. It's more about training. It's more about mindset.
Your mindset.
And if folks want to do it, like,
well,
do it.
Any marathon runners listening to us or anybody running, let us know. Give us some tips.
Yeah, we need them.
How do we even start? Just from the most basic level.
Just start. I was actually looking at videos. They're just like, you just have to start running and like see how much you can do. Like just put a timer on.
Yeah.
And see how much you can run. And then you'll work from there.
Yeah.
And it's also about breathing too.
And your heart rate.
Yeah.
So there's a way to build your heart muscle and to train your heart to be able to, like, you reach a certain, I think there's a calculation based on like your age and stuff like that. Like what should be your goal heart rate when you're running, and then bring it back down to like a baseline and then bring it back up. And that's how you kind of build your endurance with your heart. So
nice.
Look at us talking as if we're experts.
Yeah, I'm not. So
let's move on.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next thing.
To the awkwardly random question.
Okay.
All right. When is the last time you experienced nostalgia? I gotta think about this one.
Honestly, probably yesterday when I was at my friend's birthday, because they started playing a bunch of throwbacks, and we were all just reminiscing about music from like the 90s and the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And it was cool to reminisce with with friends who I've been these people I've been friends with since I was a kid, or since I was like really, really young. And to reminisce on this music that we grew up on. And even some stuff from the 80s, even though we're 90s babies, we still grew up on some 80s music. So it was just cool listening to all that. And yeah, the nostalgia was real that night.
Nice. That's a good one.
When was the last time you experienced nostalgia?
I think for me, it was also recently. So I went to a statewide conference for lawyers in like legal aid, and so I rode with a couple of my coworkers who are around our age,
okay,
and we also listened to throwbacks, but it was mostly like rock and punk rock in the beginning, and so it was a lot of like early 2000s or 2000s punk rock music, so that was fun, and that brought me a lot of nostalgia. And then, we just started playing like R&B from the 2000s, and and then it was fun. It was nice to have like a road trip, because it was a 2.5-hour drive that I drove, and they were there, and so it was nice to like listen to throwback music and kind of do like a short road trip. I also used to do road trips with my family, and so it was nice to kind of feel that nostalgia feeling. So it was good.
It's always cool to feel that, not only just the nostalgia feeling, but like feeling that with other people as a community. I think that's really special. So that's cool.
Yeah, it was nice, especially because they were coworkers too, and I hadn't really spent that much time with them, and that was like a way of bonding, I think. So it was nice to have that with them.
Oh, that's nice. So then y'all rode together. You stayed together during the whole conference. Came back together. You did like the whole thing. That's cool.
Yeah, it was nice.
Nice.
Cool.
All right, y'all. Moving on to our next segment, real world-ish. What is happening in the world?
Yep.
Unfortunately, we are going to start with something pretty tragic. Y'all have probably heard about this already. It's been all over the news that over 150 people passed away in an overly crowded. There was a Halloween event in Seoul, South Korea, I think in the Itaewon district. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. This narrow alley became super, super crowded at this Halloween event, and it ended up leading to more than 150 people dying, over 140 people becoming injured or sustaining some sort of injury. The president of South Korea declared a national week-long mourning period where many public events were canceled or postponed. There have been several mourning sites placed around the city for the victims of the tragedy. And many people, well, this is what according to what I was reading and looking up, a lot of people have were reporting that there was a lack of crowd control measures placed on this event. I don't know if this particular event, this Halloween event, had a specific organizer or something, or if they had to, or if they were being regulated in some way. But it seems from what people are saying and from what we're reading in these articles that there wasn't a crowd control measure or procedure in place for this particular event. So I think there are investigations happening too with how the police responded or not responded to the event that killed almost 200 people.
Yeah,
so it's just really tragic. Yeah, it's really sad.
Yeah, I saw videos of before and after, and it's really sad of what happened.
Yeah, I think they said that this event is said to be the deadliest disaster since the ferry sinking in South Korea in 2014, which also killed hundreds of people. Possibly also due to lack of regulation procedures or safety regulation procedures. I think there's been people are saying that there's kind of a pattern here between the two events or some sort of correlation there. So I don't know, man. It's sad. And if that was the case, that there wasn't any measures in place to regulate that and ensure people's safety.
Yeah, I didn't seem like there was.
This could have been prevented. In some way. I don't know. So yeah.
Super sad.
Anything else, Mish?
No, it just reminds me of kind of what happened. Astro World.
Yes,
earlier
Travis
this year it was Travis Scott's
thing.
And people were also it was also due to not having, I guess, prepared enough for the crowd, the huge crowd, and a lot of people were also, I don't know how many people had passed away. I don't think that was very clear, and I think they kind of wanted it to be that way, to not be clear how many people had actually passed away or even gotten injured from that. But that's definitely something to be concerned about, especially if people go to concerts or go to other events where we know that there's going to be a lot of people. It's important it's important for people who are organizing to actually take the steps to keep people safe, but then also it's important to look out for each other and also be aware of how maybe you can help others and maybe not push up against each other a lot, because that's hard.
Yeah.
And I've definitely I don't know if you have gone to concerts where you felt like you were smushed. I've definitely been to when I went to a few music festivals and you're in the crowd and it's so many people. I don't know if I've been in a situation where I literally, my feet were not touching the ground and I was being taken back and just had to go. And it was scary, but I also knew that you have to not put your hands up in the air, because then you literally hear people touching you like this, you can't move. And so I had my hands like this and making sure that I just didn't fall and just kind of went with the crowd. But it was still very scary because I've never experienced that before until going to music festivals where you kind of just have to try to keep breathing, but then also move around. And the first, when I went to a My Chem concert, in 2011, I remember not being able to breathe inside. And so then that's how I crowd surfed out. Like that's another way to get out. It's like being crowd surfed to the back or to the front to be able to like get out. But people were like, that's the nicest thing though, because people around me saw that I couldn't breathe and they were like, okay, we need to get her out of here.
Yeah.
So people looking out. So
yeah,
you can do that. That'd be great. But it shouldn't be on us, you know, it shouldn't be on the people going. That's what sucks. It shouldn't be on the people going and trying to enjoy themselves. But it sometimes has to fall on us to take care of each other.
Yeah, unfortunately. I think the whole thing about when you were mentioning earlier that they didn't want to disclose at the Travis Scott concert festival thing, how many people died. I think regardless, one person dying is one person too many dying. Like this is human life we're talking about. And people are dying and people are being injured. Like people are sustaining pretty significant injuries from these events when there's not enough safety measures in place or and then having it to fall on the people in the crowd to keep each other safe. I have never experienced that, Mish. I like to be like kind of in the back. I don't know. I get really anxious. I get really anxious when I'm like really crowded, like when I have people everywhere on all like surrounding me. So when I went to Los Dels, there was a few times where we were kind of in the crowd, but I tended to stay more like towards the back. Simply for that matter of I was just nervous. I was a little bit anxious. But I know it like there is an experience to be had there when you're like up in front and you're really close and you're surrounded by people and it's such a cool experience. But also, you know, that it can be scary at times and it can lead to those situations kind of like what happened with you where you had to be crowd surfed to the back or you know, you had to ensure that like you had your hands forward so that you had space.
Yeah, and I didn't. And Jesus was there too. And we couldn't stay together. Like the crowds were like, we were literally trying to hold hands and like we just went, like the crowds were like, but it was a different, that was another festival though. That was amazing. Festival. But yeah, I definitely, I don't know. I guess now that I'm thinking about it, being in the front, it's mostly about like seeing the artist versus like having a sort of experience. Yeah. You know what I mean? Which adds to the experience, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, regardless, everybody just be safe.
Yes.
And we are definitely thinking about the people in South Korea.
Yeah. Next topic.
Next topic. Conservative U.S. Supreme Court is reconsidering affirmative action. So, you know, a decade's precedent of affirmative action may be in jeopardy. The Supreme Court, a conservative supermajority, is, I think, set to rule on 2 cases against affirmative action at Harvard and one at University of North Carolina. Both cases brought by a conservative organization called Students for Fair Admissions, basically arguing that race should not be a factor that is considered when admitting students into universities, and that it is actually discriminating against white and Asian students. I think for one of the cases they included Asian students, and for the other they did not. I'd have to look into more of that, but so I think they haven't made a decision yet, but you know, if they do actually overturn affirmative action, right, do away with it, end it, what is this gonna mean? What is this gonna look like? Schools are already majority, predominantly white institutions. Yeah. You know, if we take this away, what are your thoughts, Mish?
It's terrible. I think we're both from the People program. So we definitely are, I feel like, a product of affirmative action. So it would be terrible, especially if we didn't have things like the People program or other programs that help low income BIPOC people into like the universities. So it's going to be terrible. It's going to be way more. Yeah, it's just going to be terrible. But the thing is that with this, I'm just curious. I feel like people have like a misconception or like a misunderstanding of what affirmative action is because affirmative action is not just like, okay, you're Latina and that's it and you're gonna get in. It basically means that like if it looks at people who have all the qualifications. And it's giving race more of a factor when that person meets all the qualifications. So just because you get in doesn't mean it was solely based on your race. It was based off of a whole other factors. And I feel like people just think that, oh, just because you're Latina or like BIPOC, you're going to get into anywhere, which that's not how it works. Especially as someone who's been through like an education system and been in predominantly white spaces throughout my entire education. So that's not how it works. People, that's like pisses me off when it's like, you think that I just got here based off of because I'm Latina, bro? Like I like look at like my test scores or like look at my GPA, look at the classes I've been taking, like look at the work that I've done. Like it's not just based off of like my ethnicity or people's races. So yeah, I think that's just a big misconception. And I think people are butthurt. I think people feel entitled to having a space, like thinking that we're taking up the space. They think that they're entitled to these spaces. These spaces should automatically go to them. And that's where it's problematic, I think. And it's very rooted in like white supremacy too.
Right. That's the whole thing too is this affirmative action created in the 60s was to help promote social equity and create opportunities for different minorities, because oftentimes race was, well, and continues to be considered, and basically white people are saying, no, you are not allowed in these spaces because you are of another race. Like that's always been a thing. We've always been, people have always been discriminated against a race, especially white against non-white. And so it's just weird. It's like, it makes me think of like people saying like, well, this is reverse racism. And like, it just doesn't make any sense. There's no merit or logic to that argument.
Yeah.
So I'm worried for what is going to happen, particularly with this Supreme Court that is mostly conservative, and has already, it seems like certain precedents don't really matter to them. So yeah, well, we're going to come back and talk about this once we hear more about, get more information around this and what the ruling is, what they decide. And we can go ahead and definitely dive deeper into our thoughts and more into the whole situation. But I agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
It's scary, man. It's scary.
Ooh, what is the world coming down to? But it hasn't always been good either way, so.
Yeah,
just another thing after another.
Just another thing. But you know what? Let's end this segment with something positive before we get into the main topic of today. Same-sex marriage becomes legal nationwide in all of Mexico. So that's some good news.
Mexico. Woo!
Mexico.
Nice.
Yeah. So I think they voted in Tamaulipas, which was the last state to legalize same-sex marriage, making all 32 states. It's legal in all 32 states. Therefore, all of Mexico, it's legal in the whole country. So, good news. Good news.
Nice, nice.
Something positive to end this really depressing segment.
Yeah. And just remember, I mean, this is going to come out before election. So we hope that if you were able to vote, that you have voted wherever you're able to vote. And have encouraged other people to vote. And, we'll see. I hate... people know, if you've listened to this podcast, like we know, like we're not, we have to tell each other to vote because that's the only way to make progress. But at the same time, like we can still be critical of like our politicians and the people who we elect. So definitely go and vote.
Please do.
I hope you have voted because this will be out way later than
after.
Yeah, after November 8th.
Yes.
So yeah, that's it.
All right. Are you ready to get into the main topic for today, Mish?
Yes. We're going to talk about compatibility. I was like, I hope I say that right because sometimes I don't say it right. Yes. We're going to talk
compatibility.
Compatibility. Woo,
what the
does
heck
that mean?
is it?
I don't know.
It? Okay, so I don't really use that word.
Same.
Every day. Like, it's not something that comes to that's not the language that I have in my head when I think about whether I vibe with this person or not.
Ooh, vibe is a good way. Vibe.
I think more of vibe and energy
when
I think about if I'm trying to make sense of what compatibility means. Jesus. Oh,
it's okay.
It's a struggle. I think of that. What
vibe? Okay.
What is it? How would you define it? How do you conceptualize it? Do you even use it?
I feel like sometimes I do, but not really. When every day, I think I would be like, oh, like getting along, maybe, or like vibing. I think is how I would say it. But I think it's a range, to be honest. I think the way that I look at it, at least, is whether you're compatible with someone or whether you vibe with someone or get along with someone. I think it has to do with a lot of things. Yeah, like we always talk about on our topic, like it deals with a lot of things. So I think for me, it's like whether we have the same interest, whether like we think about things the same way, whether we have different, like the same values or kind of different values or morals or like our personality. So like, I think it deals with a lot of areas of who we are. And I think there's different levels to like compatibility. So I think there's different areas where I'm more compatible with certain people and different areas in my life where I'm not so compatible. So I think it's just a range, like it's a scale, I think, for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What about you? Say that. Well, I want to jump off of that because, I like that you said that it ranges and that there's levels and that it can differ because you and I can be compatible, but it doesn't mean that we have to have every single interest needs to be the same and we have to agree on every single thing. And you know what I'm saying? We can disagree on things, which we do. You and I do have certain different opinions about different things. And I think we're still compatible. Because I think about like interests and like things like that, but also just how do I feel when I'm with you? How do I feel when I'm with this person? Do I feel good energy with you? Like there are some people, like for example, Rebe, my cousin, she's been on the podcast a few times now. Y'all probably know her by now. Shout out to you, Rebe. I always feel such good energy around her. Like I just feel like happy and at ease, and she's just such a kind person. Yeah. And we get along so well. And so I feel like in many, many ways we are compatible. Now, if I'm with somebody and we get into a disagreement about something, which happens, obviously, I also feel like, okay, in general, do I feel good around you? Because if I don't, if I feel like, I don't feel good when I'm around you, like anytime, really, even if we're not arguing, I don't feel like I don't want to hang out with you. I don't want to put effort into this relationship. Yeah. Does that mean that we're not compatible? I have no idea. But I would think possibly that's a possibility that we're not compatible. I'm kind of going in circles, but do you kind of get what I'm trying to say? Yeah, I think what I can't even speak. What I understand what you're saying is that you go off of base of how you feel when you're around this person. And that's what you kind of decide whether you're more compatible or not. Well, that's a factor in it, right? Yeah, I think it's a factor. Feelings on both ends. Both ends. Like how the other person feels too? Yeah, because, like, do you actually do that though? Like, do you actually talk to the, like, you know what I mean? Like when you're having a disagreement with somebody and you may not, or like you're having a discussion or a disagreement, I don't know, however you want to phrase it, and you don't feel very good with them in that moment. How do you know how they feel about it? Like, do you talk to them about it? Like, Yeah.
Like, or do you just leave it at that and like, let's revisit it some other time? Like, how do you know, like, how do you make that determination how they feel and how you feel, and then determining that you're not compatible?
So I'm not in my head thinking, let me figure this out so that I can determine if we're compatible or not. Like, that's not what that's not my thought process whatsoever.
Oh, okay. Because it sounded like that. I was like, that's interesting.
No, that seems, I mean, some people might. That seems really rigid to me. But I think more of like, if you and I are disagreeing and it's turning into some sort of like really big argument and feelings are being hurt, I would like to ask you, how are you feeling? Or like, tell me your thoughts, or tell me what you meant by this, or like, you know, trying to understand, right? And it's okay. Like, I think that's also normal to have certain conflicts, whether they lead to negative feelings or not. I'm thinking more of like, in general, like, do I just not ever, like, do we just not merge in any way? Then do we fit? Do we not fit? If we don't really fit in anything, and we just don't, like, if we both don't want to hang out with each other, we don't seek each other out. I don't know if that determines compatibility or not, but I would say that if I'm with someone who does want to be around me and I want to be around them, and we both put in effort into this relationship, I think we're compatible in some way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I don't know. I don't know how to make sense of it, because I think you're right. There's a lot of things to it. There's a lot of factors. And it could look different.
Yeah, I think it depends on people. Yeah, I think certain people see compatibility in a different way. And yeah, I think it has to do with different factors. But for me, it definitely has to do with different factors.
Yeah.
But I definitely understand, like, whether seeking out another person or that person, you mutually seeking out each other,
right,
and having that bond. Because if you don't want to, if you don't reach out to each other, then like, that's not really like a sustainable relationship. It's just kind of like you're there. So I get that. But I also like, yeah, I definitely get it.
You're saying bond, and now I'm thinking about connection. Is that also, does that correlate with compatibility?
Not for me, but I guess you can. But like, I thought that's where you were going with, is like, whether you have that connection, then that allows you to have a relationship and figuring out whether you're how compatible you are. Versus like, if you don't have that at all, then I think it would be hard to know whether you're compatible or not. So yeah, that's interesting.
How important is it important? And if so, how important is compatibility to you when it comes to forming relationships and sustaining them? And it could be romantic, it could be friendship, family, whatever.
Yeah, I think it depends on the relationship. Whether how compatible I am with somebody. Because I feel like, at least for me, I feel like there's always some common ground that I can connect with somebody. And maybe that's just me trying to like connect with people like who I meet. I feel like there's some way that I can connect with anyone that I meet at a human level. And then I think it's like, whether it's important, I think it depends on the type of relationship I want to have with the person. So like, I feel like I can still have like professional or acquaintance relationships with people that I'm not so compatible, but still compatible in a certain way. You know what I mean? Because I see it as like a scale. So I still feel like I'm compatible with them in a certain level. And that's probably okay with our level of relationship that we have. But I also feel like sometimes I'm not as compatible with certain people, and I can still have a certain relationship with them. But I feel like it's more important for me, I think, to be some sort compatible with the people closest to me. So like my friends and like my family, but at the same time, I know that I'm not going to be entirely compatible with like those people either, because people are different. People have different thoughts, different views, different ways of thinking, different interests. And so I, like you said earlier, like there's no possible way to be completely 100% compatible with everybody.
With any, yeah.
But I still think that when it comes to certain people, like I would hope that I am a little bit more compatible with them. And even if I'm not, still having that understanding of each other, even if we're not necessarily compatible.
So when let's look at friendships. How does compatibility influence how you form a friendship? You know, you said with acquaintances, like there's certain things you can have in common, but you know, that's kind of it, right? That's the level that you're at. With friendships, I think it's a little more than that. So, and then with romantic relationships, it's different as well. But I guess with friendships, how does that, like, do you even think about that with your friends, like with close friends?
I do. I feel like I do. I feel like we all kind of do in a way. Maybe we don't like say the words compatibility. Compatibility. How do you say that again? Compatibility. I feel like we've been saying it so much. It's hard to say.
We've been saying it so much, yeah.
I know. I feel like we all kind of do it in a way, but we don't actually say that we're doing it.
Yeah.
Because I think that like, I feel like we all do it, but we just don't define it as that way. But what was your question again?
Well, I'm just wondering, like you basically answered it. Like you think about it. You do think about it, right? And
I feel like we all do with everybody, but we don't like really say like, oh, we're not compatible. Like obviously there's different things in our lives, like where we, I think what is more clear to see as humans, it's easier to see as in like interests and like hobbies and like what we do and like how we eat and how we live. I think it's
that's more tangible.
It's more tangible and it's easier to see. And I feel like that's how we kind of also, and like the way that we think and our personalities, I think those are easier to see. But if I look at my friends, the friends that I have were, in terms of like personalities, a lot of my friends have a different personality than I do. We may think the same things about like politics and like morals, like those are the same, but like in terms of like maybe lifestyle, it's a little bit different than mine. Like personality different than mine, like hobbies, interest in mine, maybe like certain music is different, but like there's still some commonalities between them. But I wouldn't say that we're like the same person because we're not. But I definitely like have those in mind because I do want people in my life that are compatible in the ways that I find important, which is the way that people think and like the type of human that they are. And like, that's what's important to me. So like in other ways of my life that they may be different, like that's okay to me because I want people who are different than me, but that have the same like values as me. You know what I mean? So that's how I view it in a way. It's not like I want all my friends to be this type of person because I don't, at least that for me, I don't need that. I don't really want everybody to be like me in my friend group. But yeah, how do you view, how important is compatibility to you? And do you like take a look at that in your friendships?
Yes, I do think about it in friendships. I don't use the language necessarily, and I don't like sit down and just like, you know, analyze my relationships and say, hey, we compatible? Yes or no? And you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just how you're saying it. Like, I think we all do think about this. We don't necessarily, I mean, who knows, right? But I'm not using that particular language.
Maybe some people do. They're like,
yeah, maybe some people do. And that's why I'm trying to clarify that I myself do not. I just like you, my friends, I have friends who have very different interests. I have friends who have very different personalities, different ways of viewing things, different perspectives. And I think that's great. I think we should be surrounding ourselves with people who are different than us. At the same time, I think more fundamentally, with values and who you are as a person and as a human being, do you treat me with respect? Do you treat others with respect? You know, that is also important to me. And if you're being super disrespectful to me and like to people that I love, like I wouldn't I wouldn't be considering you as a friend, because I wouldn't allow that out of my friends. And I wouldn't expect my friends to allow that of me, you know, to be disrespectful towards them, or, you know, whatever. So I think those things are what helps us become compatible with one another. If we're going to use this language, compatibility, how we show up for one another. You know, are we both willing, you know, if we're looking at two people, two friends, are you both willing to show up for one another? Are you both wanting the best for one another? And regardless of if you have different interests or opinions, you know, ultimately, do you care about one another? And I think that can help aid in the compatibility.
Yeah.
That's kind of more stuff that I think about, rather than saying, are you compatible with me? Am I compatible with you? I don't really ask that necessarily, but those things are more important to me, is who you are as a person. How do you treat other people? How do you treat me? How do you treat people in my life? Right. So that's kind of the stuff that I think about. And I think about that stuff even also with romantic relationships. How are we treating each other? How are we showing up for one another? Stuff like that.
Nice. Yeah, you're tying that into like forming relationships, and that's part of helps compatibility. Got it.
Yeah.
Cool. That makes sense. Nice. I definitely get how you view that.
Now, can someone, let's say you are compatible, you are, you know, friends or whatever, all this stuff, can someone become uncompatible later on? Do you think that's possible? Is that a thing?
I think it can be a thing. I don't view it like that, but I can see how people can view it that way. Because for me, like I said, I view it as a scale. Yeah, so like most compatible to least compatible. And I always feel like there's some way that I can be compatible with somebody. Yeah. So to be like uncompatible is like seems so definite to me, but I can see how other people need that affinity in their lives to like maybe create a boundary with somebody else. Yeah. I personally don't see it that way, but I can definitely see how people can become uncompatible or maybe less compatible than what you were, because I think people change. People change and people grow and, you know, change in different ways. So I definitely think that that can happen. And whether you want to define it as less compatible or uncompatible, it kind of is kind of the same thing.
Yeah, it depends on how, and we're not in any way saying that like whether you see it one way or another is wrong. Whether you say it's a scale or not, it's not. We're not saying you're wrong or anything like that. I think we're more sharing just like how we kind of see it. I think I see it as a scale. I think I'm trying to figure out how I see it, to be honest. But I think I see it more how the way you're explaining it makes sense to me. And at the same time, I can also see how someone can be like, nope, there is no compatibility here. I don't want anything to do with this person for various reasons, right? It can go to very, very extreme and traumatic and maybe even dangerous levels where this person is being abusive, right, towards you or hurting you in these different ways, and you need to cut them off completely. You know, does that mean that you're saying, okay, they are no longer at all compatible with me? And there's, you know, so it really depends how you look at it.
Yeah, I think it depends on how you look at it.
Yeah, and I think that's totally fair. I think people do change over time with experience. There's different factors that lead to people changing, and I think that's just life. Sometimes you're friends with someone, you could be best friends with someone in the beginning, and years later you completely grow apart, and it is what it is.
Yep, it happens.
It happens, yeah. So I think it can happen. I think it can be a thing. I think a lot of times it is a thing. And then we find other people that we feel compatibility with. So it's interesting. I definitely want to hear more about like people's thoughts about this, and whether even people use this language, because I don't really use this language.
Yeah. I don't
necessarily
think people use this language. I think people view it as like, oh, like we don't talk anymore, or like we don't hang out anymore, or we like people, like you said, people experiences like people's lives change. Maybe people move somewhere else, or like find a different job, get a partner, or like stuff like that causes people to just drift apart. And I think that that's how people view it. We don't necessarily say, oh, we're not compatible, but I just think people's lives change. And I think that whether people want to make an effort in staying or in those relationships, even with those changes, I think that's a factor. I still don't think that makes someone uncompatible. I just think people don't put in the effort to continue their relationship. You know what I mean? Like, obviously things change, but I think if in my, like, obviously, like, you can, it makes sense for people to create boundaries to be like, I'm not compatible with this person anymore, or like, we're less compatible now. But I think as humans, in my opinion, right, if you have a relationship with someone before, like especially with a friend, and like things do change and you may not necessarily be having the same life or the same lifestyle, maybe that's something that you don't want in your life anymore, and that's okay. But it's also, I think, important to vocalize that and communicate that to the other person, instead of just like not communicating and just say, hey, we stopped talking, or we stopped hanging out, or like, oh, I haven't heard from this person for a long time, because that really does happen in real life, or from what I've seen, like especially with relationships from mine in the past with friends, like we just kind of just stop talking, and who's at fault, or like nobody's at fault maybe, or maybe both of us are at fault because we didn't, I guess, put in the effort to continue that. But does that mean we're uncompatible? Maybe. Does it mean that we're still compatible? Maybe, because maybe just things in our lives change, but we as people kind of remain the same. But I think it falls down more to the effort that you put into your relationships. Not necessarily whether you think you're compatible or not compatible, because I don't think we use that language. I think it's more like, are we putting the effort into the relationship? I don't know. That's what I think.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying earlier is how are you showing up? Are you even showing up for the other person for, you know, so, and that happens. Like, it's happened to me a few times already now where, you know, I move or they move and we just are living very different lives on very different schedules, and neither party is reaching out. And so I'm not going to say that I am free of that, because I'm not. I've done it too. And I think, it's a matter of putting in the effort. So
does that mean you're uncompatible or compatible with that person? Like, you can't really say, right? Or can you say? Because I feel like certain people might be like, oh, we're not compatible anymore because we're living different lives now, and like, obviously, and for some people, maybe that's just another way to cope with like losing that person in their lives. Or maybe they completely really do think that like there's no way that they can be friends because they're just so different now, which I still find that kind of weird. I don't know. I just personally do.
I mean, one could say, you know, okay, you drift apart and they say, oh, we're just not compatible, different lives, different cities, different schedules, whatever. But that doesn't mean that you can't. If that's how you see it, right? If we're going to use that language, how do you know that you can't become compatible again? If that's if we're using that language, right?
Yeah, that's my point. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So you know, I think whoever, if you see it that way, that's fine. I mean, like, it doesn't, to me, it's like, however you see it is however you see it.
Yeah.
And if that's your way of coping, okay. If that's your way, if that's what you really truly believe, okay. You know, ultimately, like you said, it goes down to, are you going to make this call? Are you going to reach out to this person again?
Does it matter to you? Does it not matter to you? Yeah.
Right.
Like, I think it comes down to that.
Ultimately, I think fundamentally, that's where it goes. That's the line, I think.
Yeah.
But in terms of compatibility, the reason we're using this word a lot in this podcast is because that's the topic, right? That's the language we're using for this particular conversation. But we're trying to make the point that we don't always use this language, and we also, maybe it's more about, like you said, the effort and how you show up for one another, and what your relationship looks like and what you want, right? Are the needs being met on both sides?
Yeah. And I guess Yeah, and I guess my goal for talking about this is I want to like encourage people to communicate with people. I feel like people don't necessarily, or from what I've seen, people don't necessarily communicate with people and don't really share how they're feeling about certain things. And I hope that like whether you think you're compatible or not compatible with somebody, that's up to you. Whether you want to build a relationship with somebody, that's up to you. But if you had a relationship with someone, or like the way you thought you were compatible or you were friends or whatever, and you kind of both just drifted off apart and you were like, oh, I don't know, and we're just different. And my thing is that like I feel like in situations like that, people just didn't communicate, both people. And I think that that's okay. It's okay to realize that neither of you communicated, but at the same time, like if you're still feeling some type of way about it, it's okay to communicate about it. And I feel like a lot of people just hold in a lot of emotions or thoughts where they just don't share it. And you don't necessarily have to share it, but I would hope that like now that we're getting older, people can communicate what they're thinking and what they're feeling, because I think that that's just important to you personally. It would be beneficial to you personally to be able to communicate certain things. And I don't know, I guess that's just me trying to encourage people to communicate with whatever they're thinking or feeling.
Yeah, and but also understanding that it's not easy. So yeah, it can be really hard and scary and intimidating, I think, depending on the relationship and depending on the person. So but same thing. I would encourage people to communicate. I'm trying to work on that myself. Communicating more of like my feelings. I think I'm just and we've talked about this so many times, like I'm scared of like hurting people's feelings, but really it can be even more hurtful not to communicate. And it can lead to things that could be prevented, right? If we only just communicate.
Well, I definitely think if people don't communicate, the most harm that you're doing is to yourself. Yeah. So that's just what I think. Like if you're not communicating how you're feeling and your thoughts about certain things, like how can you expect other people to like show up or be there or understand you? And I think that it's hard. I don't think there's different ways to communicate too. I think like it doesn't necessarily have to be like verbally. Like you could write it down. You can, I don't know, send an email, like whatever you feel most comfortable doing. Like you could also do that. I don't know, but I definitely think it's important to communicate. But it is different. It is hard and it's difficult, especially like having to open up. I know can be a vulnerability and it's not very easy.
But many times very necessary.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think, all right, so towards the end of our planning, we talked about compatibility tests, quizzes, things that, exist on the internet that you can take. Did you talk to Jesus about y'all's compatibility as a couple? Did you take any quizzes or tests?
We didn't take any quizzes or tests, but we definitely talked about it. Did you take any quizzes or tests with Jasmine? And did you talk about it?
I talked with her about it, and I did the zodiac one where I took my zodiac sign and hers, and just like you did it compared the two. Just how compatible are you?
Ooh, okay. And what happened?
That's what I did.
So what is Jasmine's sign and what is your sign? And what test did you do it so I can just put it in here quick?
Okay, so this was on, let me look at my screenshots, astrology.com.
Okay.
Just do like a love compatibility. It'll ask you for your sign and then it'll ask for your partner's sign.
Okay, sounds good. All right, you can go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not going to read everything because it's a lot, but I'm a Gemini, she's a Taurus. It says Taurus and Geminis, when they come together in a love affair. I'm like, whoa, love affair.
Lovers.
I know, right? I'm a lover. Okay, anyway. They both must take the time to learn what the dynamics of the relationship are and how they can best get along. So they're saying that we have different needs and we have to find ways to kind of meet in the middle and be, aware of each other's needs and show up in a way that we can to help this relationship flourish.
Yeah.
because we're both very different, and we really are. In reality, her and I, we are two very different people. We have different communication styles. We have different needs. We have different expectations. And so the main thing that kept driving into these results is the communication piece and hearing each other out. Like, I'm communicating to you what I'm needing in this relationship. I need you to hear me out, and vice versa. And I'm also here to show up for you. You know, what do you need? What am I able to provide for you? And how can we merge our lives together? So
nice.
Are you taking the quiz right now?
Yeah, I just took it. But that's cool that you both have a very like mature, I don't want to say mature, but like a really healthy way of viewing your relationship and communication and understanding what you both need, and maybe where you both are a little bit different and willing to like show up in that way. So that's really good. That it sounds like you have really good communication with each other and can work through things like in a healthy way. So that's cool to hear.
It's still hard though. Relationships are hard.
Yeah. So, okay.
But communication does make it easier.
Yeah. Communication can be hard too, though, to be honest.
It sure can. Yes, it is.
Okay.
All right. Your turn.
Okay. So I'm a Capricorn and Jesus is a Scorpio.
Oh,
I know.
I don't know what that means, but okay.
I don't either. I'm just kidding. Well, it says, I'll just read like the first, I don't know what you read, but I'll just read like the top part.
I read the first line, the first part.
Okay, when Scorpio and Capricorn make a love match, they get an opportunity to not only enjoy a loving relationship and learn the value of being a pair, but also to grow and mature as individuals. And then it says these two may be wary about showing themselves with one another at first, and this emotional caution may dampen the initial impact of this relationship. These two tend to be a bit cautious and pensive, and it takes a while for them to feel comfortable with a significant other. Though they may be shy of getting involved and not the quickest to trust and share, these two signs will discover that they can have quite a profound connection, one of friendship and deep loyalty. So I thought that was pretty nice. And it seems like we're generally compatible in terms of like, based off of this quiz, that like in terms of the way that we like, in terms of like loyalty and like connection and like being weary at first, but then once we're good, like we're good. So I kind of, that was nice to hear, because that's how I feel about our relationship. And we have been together for a while. And I think in the beginning, it was good, but it also like, it was like move with caution, because I think I mentioned this before on the podcast. It's like when we met, we were so young and we were still in college, and I literally thought, this is too good to be true. Like, are you serious? Like, I can't believe I found someone like him. And he also felt the same way with me. And so I think now that we're like obviously been together for years now and lived together and been able to build a trust and a connection and more of a friendship, I definitely like feel that.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
Thanks.
I would say, from an outsider's perspective, it seems like you two are very compatible.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we are. We definitely are compatible. And did you talk to Jasmine about like, you know, besides the test, like whether you thought you as a couple were compatible, and how did she view compatibility? Because I also asked Jesus how he viewed it. And it was very similar to how we talked about it, how I think he agrees with us in terms of like, he sees it as a scale too. And he definitely finds that like, in general, we are compatible. There's certain areas where we're the most compatible, and in certain areas where we're not so compatible. So I can share those too, what he said. Yeah,
you can share all the details.
But did you talk to Jasmine about that too?
I did.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
You go first. You go with all of that, and then I'll follow.
Okay, so he thinks that we're definitely compatible in terms of like, we definitely have a friendship. We like a lot of the same things. We communicate in similar styles, and that we also have like a physical, sexual, I hate saying this on here, but like compatibility, but at the same time, like, even if we didn't have that, we still have that, like that emotional compatibility too, because we like having like deep emotional connections too. And we also have a lot of compatibility in the way that we see our future, like in terms of like how we want to be set up financially, how like we want to get married, but we didn't want to get married anytime soon. And same thing with kids. So like all of that is on the same page. So we're very good with that. The only thing is that he did mention that the only one that we're not very compatible with is in terms of traveling, where the way in the styles in that we travel are a little bit different. He gets a little bit, he's more like, I want to take my time. Like and then when we're in like a stress situation, when it comes to traveling, he can be a little, he said that what did he say? He when he feels rushed sometimes when we're traveling, he feels a little bit, he can feel like he is all over the place or maybe forget something at home or something. And he's not very good with, that aspect of traveling and he also doesn't like going on planes. And I think that's part of it, is this fear of flying that stems through that. And then me, on the other hand, I'm like, go, go, go. We need to be here at this time. If we're not here at this time, like I kind of freak out a little bit, or I'm like, okay, now we have to move to this. Now we have this planned and I have everything planned. And so that's the way that we're a little bit different in terms of traveling, but that's not a huge deal, I think, compared to everything else that we have that's compatible. But like you said, like relationships are hard. I think communication with us can be, used to be harder than what it is now. I think that because we're very passionate and very like, we have strong opinions, and like, which is one thing that I love about him and what he loves about me, is that we like have opinions and can voice them and communicate them. Like we know what we want. So at the beginning in a relationship, that was, a little bit hard to navigate when both people are super like aware of what they want, and just how to like, how do you work together with that? How do you mesh each other's needs and put each other first when you're both like that? So yeah, we definitely did a lot of growing since the start of our relationship, but yeah, that's
cool.
That is where we're at.
Y'all went deep into that question.
I know, we did. Which we tend to do all the time when it comes to talking about things. We just go deep.
No,
but what did y'all talk about?
That's cool. Well, we talked a lot about the same things. Something that stood out to me that she said was, she used the word harmony. Like the home that we built feels harmonious. That in the fact that we're able to merge our lives together as romantic partners, right? So like with friendships, she kind of described it as like kind of parallel lives where you have like similar interests and like things like that, kind of what we talked about with friends. Exactly what we talked about with friends. But then she's like, but with us, we can actually like merge our lives and build a deeper connection in that way, in a lot of the ways that you were saying, right? Romantically, sexually, whatever, but also emotionally, and show up for each other in a deeper way, in a different and deeper way than like with friends and other people. So like kind of merging lives and then harmony, that really for some reason, like it really stood out to me. I think with us too is, she mentioned communication, and she thinks that, and I agree too, I think we could always work on it and improve it. So I think that's something that we're working on, but we always, no matter what, we always ensure that we are offering each other a safe space to be able to express whatever we need to communicate, right? So if it's like a doubt or like a concern or something, right? It's always, we're going to hear each other out, and it's going to be a safe space. So I think that's been really important for both of us, to make sure that we are showing up for each other in the way that we need to be able to sustain this relationship. And this is the longest relationship I've ever had, and it's a year and a half, which is like pretty substantial, at least to me. And so, yeah, but we are at the same time very different people. She has different interests. We do overlap in a lot of our interests, but we also have our different things. We have different hobbies. She tends to get a little bit more anxious with social, being in social gatherings. I do too, but I maybe not as much. And so that's something that I'm trying to be mindful of too, you know, and, you know, making sure like she's good and we're both good. We're okay. And then if we need to leave, we leave, you know, not a big deal, you know, so we try to like show up for each other in those moments. And yeah, I think overall, if we want to talk about the word compatible, I think we are in different ways. I think in other ways, we have things to work on, but I think that's part of being in a relationship. I don't think it's perfect. I don't expect it to be perfect. I don't think that's realistic. But yeah, it was cool to read over these results because I think it's true. We are trying to learn each other, and we're going to continue to learn each other for years and years and years. In terms of our future goals, we're pretty much on the same page about everything. And we got to that by explaining to each other first, right? Okay, where do I stand with this? Do I want kids? You know, and then she'll tell me if she wants kids, and then, you know, explain to each other where we're each coming from to be able to come to some sort of like common ground. But it kind of came really easily and naturally because we were both already thinking the same things.
Yeah.
So that just made it easier. But it was ultimately about just hearing each other out.
Yeah.
I talked a lot, but yeah.
No, that's good. You're good. I talked a lot too. It's good. That's nice to hear that you can communicate with each other and create a safe space for each other and show up for each other. And that's nice also that you've like already talked about the future. I think what's interesting with Jesus and I is that we both thought, or I don't know about Jesus, but I definitely was thinking that when we first started dating, that I didn't want to get married and I didn't want to have kids. And he was like, yeah, I can wait on the marriage too. Or maybe I was like, oh, I don't know about how I feel about that. But I definitely was very weary about that in the beginning. Yeah. And so now that like we've been together for a long time, now I'm like, my mind changed about the future. Like until, you know, even I told you outside of the podcast, like about like a year ago or something, I'm like, oh, I kind of open, like I want to get married and like I want to have kids. So like being able to have that space where like, to speak with Jesus about like our future and what we wanted and like, that's something that we want now and we didn't want that in the past. So thinking that, you know, we change. And so that's interesting to see how like we've changed throughout the years. And I don't know, I think it's pretty interesting that, or nice that we have been able to stay together even though we've changed as people, because I feel like I've changed since we started dating and he definitely has changed. And so it's nice to see how we're still in a relationship and how like it's still going really good and all of that. So that's really cool. I think I'm probably going to be changing too, you know, later on. You know, you've had a longer relationship than I have, but I think over time, either way, regardless of time, right? I think people change. No matter, not regardless of time, regardless of the timeline. So regardless of the timeline, I think people change. People grow and your relationship will grow and you'll grow together and you'll grow in different ways. So and something I really like about this relationship that I have is that we are still very much true to our own person, right? I am still very much me and I have my wants and needs and I stick true to like to my internal state, right? And she is there, like I'm not depending on her. I'm not depending on, you know, her for my happiness, but she is very much enhancing it. Like she's, you know, she's helped me in a lot of ways and is, and I hope I'm doing the same for her. So it's cool. We're each other's cheerleaders. Yeah. In a way. Yeah. That's important to support each other.
Yeah. All right.
Yay.
This is cool.
Yeah, this was
I really like our conversations. For y'all listening, hopefully you take some of this into, you know, thoughts and reflections about your relationships. Yeah. And like Michelle said, you know, definitely try to communicate your wants and your needs and your thoughts to those you love, to your friends, to your partners, to your family members.
And also listen.
And listen, absolutely. Yeah. For sure. All right. Well, I think that is all for today.
That's it. Thank you for listening. Let us know what you thought. Let us know what you think about compatibility. What you think about astrological compatibility.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it'll be good to talk about or hear about from you all. And thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in, y'all. We will catch you at the next one.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye.